Wednesday, August 15th, 2018, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So today is a very important date. August 15th is the 47th anniversary of when the bankers finally took over the U.S. government. Back in during the Civil War, during the Gettysburg Address, Abraham Lincoln, President Lincoln said that government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth at his Gettysburg Address. What we've had for the last 47 years is government of the bankers, by the bankers, for the bankers. And I'll go into that a little later, of course. I'm going to look at what the markets are doing this morning. It's 10 to 8 a.m. here in London. So what's happening on August 15th, 2018? Well, surprisingly, gold is down $6 at 11.88. Silver is down below $15. Now it's down 13 cents at 14.91. So what's going on? Why are precious metals continuing to fall in dollars? Or they're not even, I would say they're quoted in Federal Reserve notes, because constitutionally dollar is a weight of silver. Since 1971, the bankers have been in charge. I mean, they stole all the gold in 1933. They've got control of a lot of gold, not all of the physical gold, and they need to keep the price of gold, which is actually gold and silver are constitutional money. They need to keep it in check. They want people to keep they want to keep people under their control, right? Because we've got government of the bankers, by the bankers, for the bankers at the moment. Well, what about the Dow? Dow futures down 16, 25,279. S&P is down 2. NASDAQ down 4. So stock market's a little lower, not much happening. Currencies as well. The fiat currencies, the pound dropped below 127 this morning. The low was 126.90, so continuing to fall further. Right now it's at 127.20 unchanged. The euro got down to 113.16. So the euro continued to drop lower, but is now rebounded to 113.43. The dollar versus the yen 111.23, up 9. Chinese currency is down 0.2%. The dollar is up to 691. Crude oil has dropped a little bit below 67 right now. It's 66.29. I think there's some news about that you have every so often about the supply of crude, and that dropped the price lower. So August 15th, 1971, I think it's a very important date. Back in the 19th century, Meyer Amschel Rothschild, the guy who created the five arrows, who sent his sons to London, Paris, Naples, Vienna, and Frankfurt, he said, "Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws." He was admitting there that if you have a central bank and you let the private banks control the issuance of money, you get government by the bankers, for the bankers, of the bankers. And you could argue that that started in 1913 when the Federal Reserve was created. But I would say it was done in steps. And I guess Bretton Woods was the last step. They had already abolished domestic gold or sound money everywhere, including the United States and Europe. And Europe started with World War I. In the States, it was in 1933. And then they still had silver to deal with, and that was done in the States in 1964, in some of the European countries in 1968. In the UK, it was done right after World War II in 1947. So we've had government for the bankers, of the bankers, by the bankers for many years. And that is why this has happened. And you look at the chart here, that's why U.S. debt levels have gone up so much. This is not updated. Right now we're above 21 trillion. But you can see that it started moving higher after 1971. And it's really picking up. Why is that important? Well, because we've got government by the bankers, of the bankers, for the bankers. And what do bankers like? What do bankers make money on? On debt. The more debt the U.S. government issues, the more commission they make. The more people borrow for, be it for to buy a car, a house, to educate themselves, or to just use their credit card, the more money they make. So when is this all gonna end? Well, I don't know. We all know that things can't go on forever. Unsustainable debt doesn't go on forever. So here's the comment. And August 15th, 1971 was on a Sunday. And this is, I'll just play it here. This is what President Richard Nixon said. He was a puppet of the bankers. But let's hear what he says. I've got a clip here where he announces the decision.
The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to...
So just pause it here. It's the old excuse that they blame the speculators. So if the American dollar was so strong and the economy was so strong, why would the speculators be attacking the American dollar, right? It's just what Erdogan is saying right now about the lira. He's blaming the speculators, right? So nothing changes.
Suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary...
So there you go. He said he was going to suspend the convertibility of the American dollar into gold temporarily. Of course, that was 47 years ago, and there's still no convertibility. And what should he have really said if he was an honest individual? Well, he would have said that because of the government's profligacy over the last 10, 15 years, with the Vietnam War, with the Great Society Project, welfare and more, because of that, our dollar has become so weak, we've lost so much gold that we're going to have to default. That's what he should have said. And that would have been truthful. So, and that's what led to this. And there's some interesting stories about this period, especially about Paul Volcker, because a lot of people know Paul Volcker as the chairman of the Federal Reserve. But prior to that, he had other positions. For example, during the Nixon administration, from 1969 to 1974, he was Undersecretary of the Treasury for International Affairs. So, and it says here, he played an important role in President Nixon's decision leading to the suspension of gold convertibility on August 15, 1971, which resulted in the collapse of the Bretton Woods system. Volcker considers this suspension of gold convertibility the single most important event of his career. Yeah, no shit, Paul Volcker. And I'm sorry I used that word, but it needs to be used. In general, he acted as a moderating influence on policy. So what did Paul Volcker do prior to working for the government and the Fed? Well, he joined 1952. He joined the staff of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, a private bank. He left that position in 1957 and worked for David Rockefeller. Yes, Chase Manhattan Bank. There you go. And there's an interesting story about another banker, one that I actually think was fairly honest, but he was still part of the game. He worked for the Fed. He worked for, I think, Chase Manhattan or Citi as well, John Exter. And he by 1971, he had retired, and he was, I think, invited. I'm not sure if he was invited or if he was invited to go to Camp David when President Nixon was meeting with his officials to decide on this. And Paul Volcker, who knew John Exter, asked him what they should do because they're losing gold. There's a run on the bank, right? So John Exter told Paul Volcker there's a few things you can do. You can devalue the dollar, i.e. raise the price of gold from $35 an ounce, maybe to $100, or to stop this flow of gold out. Or you can raise interest rates. And then the third nuclear option was this one, to basically default, close the gold window, temporarily suspend gold convertibility, which is default. And unfortunately, Paul Volcker chose the nuclear option, and that's why eventually in 1979, he had to come back to the Fed to fix the mess that he put the dollar in. So if you don't believe this is not the government who's done that, is the bankers. You can see, of course, government was involved, but it was the Rockefeller bankers who decided this. And ever since then, we've had this, how can I say, financialization of the economy, growing inequality, huge unemployment. Yes, we don't have 3.8% unemployment. It's more like 20%. There's almost 100 million people out of the workforce in the United States. Same thing for Europe. But what we've had is a lot of debt. Wall Street doing really well. The corporations being taken over by the bankers. And how do they do that? Well, with the pump and dump mechanism. They've got control of the money. And that's why people are so disenchanted. And that's what's happening. So what needs to be done to change this? Well, only through education, in my opinion. I'm not a violent person. I don't think the solution is force. I think it's through educating people how money works. And that's why I recommend What Has Government Done with Our Money by Murray Rothbard. I'll put a link below in the description so you can buy it if you want. There might be a free PDF online. I would say Murray Rothbard should have said, what has government and the bankers done to our money? But that's another question. So yeah, 47 years of government of the bankers, by the bankers, for the bankers. So if you'd like to expose the rule of the bankers, 47 years, please share this video far and wide. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can also support my channel. There's some links below in the description. You can donate to my channel. You can also buy some merchandise. I've got End the Fed t-shirts, End the Fed mugs. And you can also follow me on DTube, Steemit, and on Twitter. I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.